then you should be able to identify the problem statements by the time you're doing your 8th or 10th interview. You will start getting a pattern over there. If you're not getting a pattern, stop, which means that you probably are not structured your questions right. You're not probably asking the right questions. Hence, this JTBD helps you to kind of understand the entire end-to-end life cycle.
Hello all, welcome to today's session. So today we are honored to introduce Bopanna, a distinguished professional with over 18 years of experience in product management. He's currently serving as product manager at Philips, and he's been instrumental in driving innovations in IoT and connected devices. So we are thrilled to have him here and to share the insights on effective user interviews and leveraging generative AI for data synthesis. So welcome you, Bopanna. And over to you.
Yeah. Hey, thanks a lot. I just have a couple of questions trying to know my audience. If you can just type in what is your experience in terms of how many years of experience do you guys have? Is this all new to you, or you have some amount of experience in product management? That's one question which I want just to understand the maturity of the crowd I'm dealing with. Although this entire topic is centered around customer interviews and other stuff, the key objective which I want to kind of drive here is this customer insight collection. One of the methodologies is customer interviews, right? Now, that is not the only way you essentially collect insights. Like there are like multiple methodologies, and in different stages of your product life cycle, you will use different methodologies to kind of collect the customer insights. Now, again, customer insights, when I kind of talk about it, what do I mean is essentially trying to empathize with the consumer, right? Like unless and until you do not empathize enough, which means that you do not understand the consumer and their needs, right, or their wants, you will not be able to kind of come up with a solution. Now while you do that, it could also be that you are also trying to look for the feasibility and the viability of it, right? Like anyone in product management who is working on a product management will know there are like three things. One is we check whether there is a desirability of doing something. Desirability essentially is whether there exists a problem, and if there exists a problem, how big the problem is, right? Now, and is it really worth solving it, right? Will customers really buy into it? Then you have the feasibility bit of it, which is basically you go and see if there is a solution available, right? Like customers would want to say, I want to be able to travel to moon in say 1,000 rupees, right? Or a couple of dollars. Currently, that might be a need, that is something which everyone on the planet might desire to do. I'm just giving a hypothetical example, but then the feasibility of that is not, right? So now, can you build something of that sort which can travel at $1,000? Something not possible, right? So that's not technically feasible, or it's not feasible at the current stages, the technology which we have, right? So as I said, so one is desirability, feasibility, right? So where does then the entire customer interview thing, where does that come into picture is essentially in the first bit of it, desirability. We are trying to figure out if there is a problem and how can we quantify this problem. Now, to identify this problem, we are trying to come up with a structure, right? Because if you when you go and do this in a completely uncharted territory, what happens is that you will probably not be able to reach to the conclusion or come up with a solid backing to say that yes, this is the problem I know, and I have this backing, here is my data to back it up, and this is what the consumers are telling me, right? So to give that structure is what we are trying to do here. Eliminate the noise and to give that structure to it is what we are trying to do right now. To tell that, now you're trying to you're trying to figure out the desirability, right? When you're trying to figure out the desirability, you're trying to collect the requirements and try and understand the consumer, right? And there are like basically, as you know, that there is something called a qualitative studies which we do, and then we do called as quantitative studies, right? And then we also do behaviors, right? Behaviors, and then there's goals and attitudes. Behavior is the customer says something and does something, right? So that is what we call as behavioral studies. And then you basically have the goals and attitudes, right? Goals and attitudes is essentially what people are trying to achieve out of this, right? Why do they want this problem to be solved, right? And what is their attitude towards the problem to be solved? So normally when you're working on a very greenfield project, you're normally on the left topmost corner of your this one, where you essentially what you do is that you do a bunch of user interviews, right? And that's the topic which you're going to spend a lot of time going forward. But then there are other things also. You could also shadow follow a consumer and then see how does he do a job. So you basically take permission from a consumer, go with him in his environment, see how he does a particular job, or what problems was he facing when he was trying to do a job, right? Sometimes it'd be a combination of user and that, right? Intuit does that, is known to do that a lot, right? Like they basically encourage people to go and stay along the customer and shadow the customers, and also here Flipkart also does that at least sometimes, right? So they basically do these things to essentially understand the environment in which the consumers are consuming our product, and then what real problems are they facing, and then they basically bring that back, right? The participatory design, the focus and card spotting things, what you're trying to see is once you've identified a problem statement, then what you essentially try and do is you basically come up with a hypothetical solution to it, and then you essentially do an early design analysis. This is basically the design sprints where you basically do some prototypes and try and show that to them and see that whether it matches to what they're trying to say before you actually go and start building the actual product, right? So that is the leftmost corner. Now, as and when the product is built, then what you do is that you move towards the right side, which is basically you try and do some usability testing. That's where more and more people get involved. The techniques for usability, eye tracking, trying to see where they're seeing, whether they're seeing the right things which you want to see, right? And then once you launch the product, then you actually have a product which is there in the market. And then what you essentially try and do is that you then try and do a real consumer analysis through when you kind of do logging, right? And then you basically check on the Google Analytics or the other products as to how the consumers are using your product, whether they're reaching the place where they want to reach, and then you basically do a data analysis, right? So those are the kind of things which you do in your A/B testing, your site traffic testing. And then the final thing is essentially you also do then the customer support analysis, as and when what are the problems the consumers are saying and all these things. So this is essentially how a product development lifecycle goes through. You basically use all these methodologies, collect consumer insights, and in them, one of the methodology which we are talking about is right now user interviews, which normally is done at the very beginning, and then you basically complement it over a period of time when you want to add more features, or you basically wanted to do something or solve a particular problem, but then you see that the consumer is not actually using it, and then you go back and take feedback and see why this has happened. Right? Why is that you're not doing it? Like for example, one of the very good examples of going back and asking the consumer about this is initially if you kind of look at it in the watches, people basically show something called a sleep score. People said, yes, a sleep score. I want to know the quality of the sleep and other things. But then after you see a sleep score, what do you do with it? There's nothing you can do with that sleep score, right? Then people realize that all of a sudden it fell down. Now, when they went again and interviewed the customers, I mean, you guys said sleep score, but then they said, yeah, I saw that a couple of times. I saw a nice graph, but then I don't know what to do with it. Then you suddenly realize that ultimately what the consumer wants is to do is the job that he wants to sleep better every day, right? That is the job he wants to do. And hence, it's not the sleep score which is important. It's basically how can you improve the sleep score. And then you basically then realize that more than the sleep score, what you need is to guide the customers how to sleep better, right? So that they can get better scores. So that is the kind of thing which you kind of have to think about it. Now, we'll deep dive more into user interviews, but I also want to give you a structure as to how we will go about doing it. When in the initial bit of it of user interviews, I basically talk about how do you set up the environment for conducting user interviews and stuff around it, right? How do you prepare for it and other things. But then the deeper discussion which you're going to do is how do you basically come up with the right set of questions to ask your customers, right? What is the methodology which you can use to kind of ask the right set of questions, and why you should have a methodology behind it, right? To ask the right set of questions, and then you basically then figure out how to basically ask those right questions. And then the last bit of it, what we'll try and do is we will touch upon how can you use Gen AI, because as product managers, you will be doing a lot of interviews, you'll be having a lot of scripts with you. Now you cannot, one of the long jobs is boring jobs, or what the essential jobs is essentially trying to make a note of it and then essentially do thematic analysis and then kind of piling that information, right? And how can you kind of probably automate it, using the Gen AI methodology is what what I'm trying to do, right? Like how can you use some of the key interview snippets, and then you basically feed that to a Gen AI machine, right? And then they can basically help you to kind of organize that in a manner where you can use that and keep on updating it without you actually trying to spend a lot of time. I will not advise doing that. It is better that if you have a group of developers and a bunch of product managers with you, you sit together, hear to it, and synthesize on your own and do it. But there are organizations where you probably are a single runner who's doing everything on your own. So you may probably need some tools which can help you do that job faster. So for that is the reason which I'm trying to kind of give you the last bit of it. This is the typical interview structure, guys. So the first thing you have to do, essentially, you have to remember is there is a whole process of recruiting the right people to interview. Now, it might be something which you choose to do on your own if you don't have much help running around. But normally there is an external team in big organizations which will help you to do that, right? And to do that, what you have to remember is that you will have to have a bit of intuition in terms of what are the customer profiles I want to target, and once you get those customer profiles, you basically make a request and ask them to come and join the interview process, right? Now, as I said, now like Intuit and other companies encourage you not just to do a customer interview, but actually be with the customer, and as and when they're doing a job, you try and understand why they're doing what they're doing and ask those questions. But that is typically most of the organizations which I have seen, big organizations, that normally does not happen. Normally what they do is they get customer profiles, they ask them to come to a location which is where they basically have this entire customer interview setup, and they basically ask this question. So that becomes all more important, that on one extreme is you basically completely doing everything on intuition, which is bound to fail most of the times. And then you have the other extreme, which is essentially you're spending a lot of time and energy to spend time with the customers, which is the best way to do it. But of course, you know that on a long run, you will not be able to move at a very fast rate, right? So there's the between structure is what we essentially is the interview methodology, which you can use, right? So once you identify the right customer profiles, what you should do when you're trying to do an interview is what I've kind of listed down the steps, right? Like A is you basically make him comfortable, you greet him. While this might all sound simple to you guys, but what you realize is that when you get into interview room, if the person who is basically come there to answer your questions is not made comfortable and he does not feel at home, the answers quality will be as bad of it. So it is very important that you actually do this, right? So you basically do a bunch of greetings, make him feel comfortable, right? And then the other thing which I normally want you to do is if someone else is actually recruiting the customer profiles for you, if it has been handed over to an agency, either at the beginning of the interview or much before calling the consumer into the location, try and do a fitment check, right? Like for example, if you are trying to do a procurement analysis for a hospital, right? Now for a procurement analysis of hospital, you have to have someone who actually is working in a procurement department. If we get someone who is managing the operations of a hospital, he is not the right candidate for you, right? So you should always do a fitment check whether the person whom you are calling in is the right person or not before you actually put him to the grind of interviews. Otherwise, what will happen? You will start asking him questions, and then he is not the right fitment. He will try and impress you. He will give you all kind of wrong answers, right? And that's totally misleading for you, and it will become useless. So it's very important. The profile which you asked for, you do a fitment check of whether he is the right person who is coming there, right? And then you basically set a context. After you know this person is fitting into you basically set a context and essentially say, I have called you for so interview. These are the kind of insight. You don't ask him for the insights. You basically say that I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, because if you're saying I'm going to ask you a set of insights, then of course he's already prepped towards answering towards those insights. So you don't say that. You essentially say that I basically I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions on the job which you're doing, like how do you go. I'm basically trying to understand how you are trying to how you do your procurement process, right? And I want to see if there is a way to simplify this process, and if there are any pain points which I can understand out of this. Like, this is where you basically tell him. You're not going to talk about the solution or anything, right? Then you basically start the interviews, and you ask the questions. And one good thing which I always tell you to do is, once the customer tells you a couple of answers, try to summarize it in your own words and ask for his understanding, because there might be chances that things might get lost in translation, right? But when you kind of hear to what he says and then you basically summarize, then you are confident. You're confident that you know what he has told, and B, he's also trying to confirm back to you. Like, people, if you hear to podcast of like Lenny podcast and all this, once they ask the questions and the interview responses, he tries to summarize it and tells that if you should. It's a very nice way, right? One is he is also trying to get a better understanding, and at the same time, what is happening is he's getting a confirmation from the opposite person that yes, you have understood, right? And if there is any corrections which need to be made, he'll make those corrections right there and then, right? And then finally, because that person has come to you, or even though it might be a paid interview or a not paid interview, please thanks and acknowledge him, so that in future, if you want to bring him back for a review of your solutions, he's there for you, and you should not feel like unwelcomed there when you are trying to do like a card sort analysis or other things. So try and do this. Remember these things when you are doing an interview process.
So basically, these interviews, right? In organization, so as a product manager, we have a customer persona. So how does the selection of people happen? Like, we give a product persona to some external agency, or how does it happen?
No, see, first thing is, when you do not identify a persona much ahead. A persona is actually the outcome of your segmentation process, right? So that is something which you have to remember, that when you're doing an interview, you're just choosing a customer profile. Like, if you're trying to build a online library mechanisms, right? Book mechanism, then you're trying to kind of identify people who read books. Then you basically say, I need at least people who read a lot of books, and I need people who are trying to build reading habits, right? And right, these are the two profiles of customers whom you're trying to choose, right? So the questions you probably ask for a profile customer is, how many books do you read? I mean, he says, I read at least one book in a week, which means that he's a person who is right. And then what do you do with the books, right? He says, I just stack them up, and I would like to do. And do you like to do something about it? Yes. So he's probably a customer profile. The other person profile is basically someone who is essentially trying to basically trying to build a reading habit, and he says, yeah, you know what, reading is a problem for me, I would like to kind of build a reading habit, right? So now you're basically, I've got two customer profiles, where one is a person who is essentially is a person who's reading, and then a person who is essentially. From there, when you try and ask them the questions, their problems, then you start from those answers what you get, right? Like, the synthesis of this interviewing process, from the answers what you get, people who come up with a common set of problems, you then put them under a bag, right? Behavior, attitude, and things what you say, right? So that you basically do a bag of that persona, and that's how you create a persona. A persona, avoid creating or defining a persona very much in the beginning. That's very you will be misled, because then you're already biased, right? The whole idea of product management is not to be biased, right? And go with what the customer tells, and then you basically learn your things.
Yeah. So before even go to persona, you have customer profiles, where you meet with the different customer profiles, and then you build customer persona based on the inputs that are given, right? So
yes,
this is an interesting insight. Most of the people start with customer persona. Okay, we have a product, let's write customer persona. No, that's not.
That's a very, I think that's an old way of doing things, and that's something led to a lot of people being misled and building wrong products. So your customer persona is an outcome of all your market research process and other things, and then you identify a set of problems, and for that problem, it becomes a persona comes into picture, right?
I have one question, Bopanna. Like you mentioned, key user interviews can be used throughout the product, from ideation to testing to post launch. So I have one question: key after a product has launched, so if like after product has launched, then we take user feedback. So how feedback is different than user interview?
Okay, so when you take a user feedback, user feedback is also one way to understand more about the consumer. But when you take a user feedback, you're mainly doing quantitative study, right? The first slide which I basically said, you're probably doing a survey, right? Or you're asking them to write some snippets in the beginning, right? User surveys, right? That is the feedback, or a customer support data analysis, right? But why I ask you to also keep continuing doing user interviews is basically you will now, once you have identified created a solution, and the solution is out in the market, then people will come out with more problems, right? Or they basically say whether it works or not. So you will understand more. The whole idea behind user interviews is to put a why to your quantitative. So that's why you see there in this one. So in your quantitative, in your left side of the slide, it is called as, the bottom bit is called as quantitative, the top bit is qualitative. The best match is when your quantitative data matches your qualitative data, right? When you have a quantitative data, which basically is like quantitative is, people will say, I want grocery products to be delivered within 10 minutes, right? Now, an user interview, people will, when you're talking about it, they'll say, I want it to be delivered quickly. He might probably not speak about the time and other things to you, right? But then someone else might also say that for me, I plan my, I'm not so much interested that it gets delivered quickly. But I should be able to kind of at least help me plan that in a much better manner, right? So now you figure out how many, with the user surveys, when you kind of do and say, you then try and figure out, is it your the customer segment you want to serve is bigger on the quick commerce side or on the long commerce side, right? So that essentially you know that there is a commerce side, and then there is a long commerce, long for people who are okay to order once in a month, right? Now, how do you know who is your consumer whom you want to serve? Is based right, is through your user surveys. But why do you want to serve it? Why is it that quick commerce is very important? You want some particular words to be used, or how to design it, things that comes only through your user interviews. To say user interviews, there might be multiple methodologies which people might suggest to you, but this is something which I have used and which has worked for me, and also this is something which is also widely used in a lot of organizations, which is essentially the jobs to be done framework, right? Jobs to be done framework is good because it essentially tries to capture all the jobs which the customer does to get a particular problem solved, right? Like for example, if you want to order a grocery, ultimately your what you want to do is that you want the groceries to be delivered at your home, right? So you basically your job statement will look something like, buy groceries at the beginning of the month so that the essentials are stocked up, right? So this is how you will probably be your job statement. But to do that, right, you will have a series of things which you probably do, and each of those steps are very important. They are called as the core jobs, which are still important for you to essentially achieve that, right? So now hence this JTBD helps you to kind of understand the entire end-to-end life cycle, right? Right from the time the consumer has right from the time the consumer, how does he go about preparing for it? How does he go about planning for it? How does he basically what are the problems which he faces when he's trying to do? He basically explains that end to end when you follow this JTBD methodology to kind of get the answers. When we go forward, I'll explain that more. But remember this: the reason why I personally prefer jobs to be done framework is essentially it tells you from the time the customer installs a product on an app or tries to look for a product till the time the consumer uses the product, and then once the product he is using, right? How does he basically wants to keep using it? How can he keep using it, or how can he basically service it? Till there it covers the end-to-end life cycle. The kind of questionnaires the questions which you can ask by following this framework, it covers the end-to-end job. And then you can build that thin slice end-to-end, which is needed for you to make sure that those consumers are with you. So the core of JTBD is essentially a job, right? Now this is the thing around which the entire world revolves, right? Now what do I mean by a job is essentially it basically has okay, as I was saying, like assuming you're buying groceries, so to buy groceries at the beginning of the month, so that the essentials can be stocked up, right? That is one of the jobs. Or able to listen to music while I am traveling. Like now, if you look at it, it begins with a verb statement. It always begins with a verb statement saying that able to listen to a music, right? And then you have got an object which is basically listen to the music, and then contextual classifier essentially is traveling. Now, how do you know that you have captured the right job? There are three characteristics which they basically say. One is that the job is stable and it does not change over time. Now, listening to your music, ordering for your grocery does not change over a period of time, does not change from a location to geography, right? And it is agnostic of the solution. Now, for ordering for grocery, a person may call up through a phone and then order for grocery, right? Or he may himself go and then he essentially places the order and someone comes and delivers it at his home. Or you could use an app, right? And so there are multiple ways that the job can be done, right? But whoever does that job in the cheapest and the most efficient manner, right? When I say cheapest, in a sense that with minimum amount of energy and minimum amount of cost, and then who can do that more efficiently so that he does not run into issues, is the best solution which will be available in the market. So this is the basic framework around which the jobs to be done framework starts, which is basically defining the core job. So what you're seeing right now here is, with the core job being identified, right? Then you basically now you have essentially what you're looking there is, what are these core jobs? Now look at the beauty of this entire thing, right? So when then there's a core functional job, you basically have, how do you define the job, which is what I said, listen to music. Locate. Now locate is essentially trying to say, assuming you're listening to music, how do you basically look for good music? Where do you find your good music which you want to hear, right? So now you're trying to figure out, how does the customer actually figure out that which is the music he wants to learn, right? So you have a job being come there. How do you prepare for it? Like now, how do you choose to prepare for it? Do you make a list of all those things? Do you make a note of it mentally somewhere, or you write it down somewhere? How do you prepare for the job? Or do you basically go to a quiet room? So this is how you do that, right? And then confirming a job essentially is talking about, like, how do you now know that you have everything what you need to start hearing to a music, right? And then how do you execute it? Then how do you basically play it? Do you hear it through a pod, or do you hear it through a TV, right? And then how do you monitor, like if you want to kind of figure out how much time I want to listen to the music and things like that. Like, and then once this is done, how do you modify it? Like if you want to add more items to that music playlist, how do you do that? And then how do you conclude it? Like how do you basically say that you have achieved this, whatever you want to do, that you have heard to a good music? Like what is your criteria for hearing to a good music, right? So that is what is this jobs to be done framework. Now you see that it is covering end to end, from the time a consumer has thought about a job, which is basically listening to music, till he basically is satisfied to hearing a music, right? Now each of the, when you basically follow these steps, right, you've covered the end-to-end life cycle, and then each of the cycle will have an outcome to it, right? That is how you can measure whether each of the jobs which is there for define, locate, prepare or something is actually doing what it is necessary, and you have a quantitative way of figuring to it. Now, in addition to that, in the jobs to be done framework, we also have something like a related job. Now, a related job is something like a cherry on the cake normally, right? Like, for example, someone might say that I sleep off when hearing to the music. I want to be able to switch off the music once I go to sleep, right? That's a related job. It's not a core job, but it's a related job which will give you a better experience, right? Then there is something like an emotional job, which you can also again ask. An emotional job could be like, I want to be able to share my music playlist to my friends, right? And that kind of is that it helps you connect with your friends better, or it basically elevates your position among your social group network, and that's how you do it, right? Consumption chain job, right? Then this other thing which we call a consumption job is essentially a payment reminder kind of stuff, right? Like you have now actually taken a subscription from Spotify, and now you want to you don't want to remember on your own, when the next payment or the is due for the subscription. So you want to be told, reminded about it, right? So that you don't miss it, right? The financial outcome could also be sometimes that if you look at notions and other things, which is right now the thing which is happening, people would want to probably sell the products which are created, or they want to sell their playlist which they are creating for money. Like people, if they want to hear to your playlist and your playlist is being rated very high by people, and then you at some point of time you probably want to monetize it, right? So that is the financial outcome. So along with the core jobs of define, locate, prepare, confirm, execute, monitor, modify, and conclude, there are these other 4 related things which will help you kind of have a end-to-end picture of the. Now I am hoping that this kind of helps you understand why a JTBD framework is so good at identifying the problem statements, right? Like the job statements for a consumer.
Now I have a question, Bopanna, if I may ask.
Yeah.
So how can we relate JTBD to user interviews? So how these two are related?
Okay. So the whole point is that now that you know that these are the jobs, this is universal. By the way, this is the universal truth, right? So this is the framework which basically says how a consumer basically consumes a product or not consume the product. Basically, how a consumer does a job, wants a job to be, what the jobs to be done, how does he go about doing a job? These are the things which he does to get a job done, right? So now you can ask questions based on this framework, which is a nice leading way to the next set of slides which I'm going to do, which essentially tells you what do you mean by define. I'll take an example and say what do you mean by define, what do you mean by locate, what are the kind of. Now you have a structure to your questions. You are not jumping everywhere, right? You first ask the define question, you confirm the define question, what is the core job you want to do, then you basically say how do you prepare for it. Then he is also organized in his thoughts when he answers you the questions, right? And then once everything, when you complete your conclude questions, then you've got other things, right? Like tell me more about, trying to understand more about the domain, which is the related jobs, right? Which you may not come out directly, but then they are like still associated to that particular domain, right? Or the emotional benefit of it and the other things. You can ask the questions. You can now structure your interview in a nice manner. Otherwise, normally the biggest question is what happens is you start asking the question, he tells you some answer, then you jump somewhere else. Now everything becomes jumbled up, and then when you try to synthesize it, you will not be able to synthesize the output of it. It looks all everywhere. The other thing is that once you have the structure written and you have noted all these questions, if you have a bunch of 3 or 4 product managers, or you've got a bunch of developer people who are essentially doing this interview, right? They all now can follow this structure, right? Otherwise, what will happen? Each one might end up asking different questions, and then you will get different answers. So normally, what people say is that a good interview, you should within 8 to 12 interviews, you should be able to get similar answers. If the profile of the consumers are you're selected is good, then you should be able to identify the problem statements by the time you're doing your 8th or 10th interview. You will start getting a pattern over there. If you're not getting a pattern, stop, which means that you probably are not structured your questions right. You're not probably asking the right questions, and you're getting various answers which are not related to each other, and right, which will help you to go back to the drawing board and then reframe your questions, reorganize them, and ask them in a better manner, right? So if you want that, you want to get a structure, you want to get common answers, then this framework helps you to kind of do that. Yeah, this I've just drawn this, right? Normally in the market, what you see is that on the value proposition strategizer and other things, this is what you see is on the right side, which is basically the gains, pains, and customer jobs, right? Now, no one tells you what a customer job is. They basically list down, someone thinks what could be a customer job, and he writes it down. But that's not the right way to do things, right? Because a customer job ultimately is, you have to ask the customer and identify. How do you know what are the customer jobs? If you follow this framework, then you will be able to do. Now, the left side of it, as you know, will be the solution bit of it, right? Now, the customer would have the emotional jobs and the pains and gains. All you can basically write them down here. What are those things? And then for each of those jobs, then on the right side, if you look at the pain gains, canvas, the left side will be your solution, right? At the left side, the solution. Once the solution is available, what you do, you then do a prototype based on that, right? And then you take it back to the customers again, which I showed in the first slide, right? You take it back to the customers, do a cart sorting, or basically verify whether those designs what you've done makes sense, whether it is actually trying to solve the problem or not. You get an initial feel of it, and then you basically post the design sprint, you start actually building the MVP product prototype. So this is the structure which will help you do that. So let me take an example, guys, and I will try and tell to you how this define, locate, monitor, pains, gains, and everything will work, right? Like say, for example, as I was saying, assuming you are going to a hospital and you're trying to interview the procurement team to kind of understand what are the jobs to do, and you're trying to use this JTBD framework, right? Look, so now the first question is your define framework, right? So in the design framework, what do? You basically ask, what is your primary responsibility towards the hospital procurement? What are the typical hospital supplies you buy? The first times or the regular supplies, right? Like, so this is the kind of questions which you can ask. Locate is then basically you ask them with the recruitment, like how do you find information about the product and suppliers who are supposed to send you the hospital items. Now say in a hospital, remember, in a hospital setup, the procurement team is responsible for procuring beds, stethoscopes, syringes. Then there are things which are daily consumables over there. They have to basically procure the cleaning items, which is the Lysol and other things. Then they have the the operation room setup. They have to purchase the big iron machines. They have to purchase the surgical instruments and stuff like that, and then all the necessary drapes. So you can assume the amount of things which a procurement team in a hospital essentially procures to keep a hospital running, right? Now you're trying to build a ERP system for them, right? To kind of be able to kind of identify the right supplier, right locator in a cheaper and a better manner, so that they can run their hospital operation smoothly, right? Now, for that, if you follow the JTBD framework, now you cannot ask the questions haphazardly everything, right? Now, if you follow JTBD framework, now you can essentially say, what is your primary responsibility? That tells you your core job, right? The core job is known to you, right? And then you basically have the locate. You come back to the previous one. Previous slide, yeah. Right, then you now go to the locate, right? When you look at the locate, what you're basically saying, where do you look for the information for this product and suppliers, right? What are the pain points there when you're trying to look for suppliers? He may essentially saying that, you know what, I'm not always able to find a good supplier because I end up going to the same consumer because I don't have enough number of people, right? So that is one of the things. Probably is big pain point is identifying multiple suppliers, right? Then you basically say prepare and confirm. How do you know that you have chosen the right supplier before you go and place an order, right? Like, how do I know that supplier A is better than supplier B, right? Maybe supplier A is giving it a cheaper cost, but supplier B is more consistent. When he needs, he'll send it to you, right? He's able to give you just in time delivery, whereas the other supplier although is giving you at a lower cost, but then he is not reliant. Like, when you want, he may not probably able to give, right? Now there comes two different profiles. You probably need both of them. One of them is cheap, but you can order them in bulk and wait for some time, and you know that will come at some point of time. Whereas for another supplier, a customer, segment is basically the immediate suppliers, right? Like, who can give you things on time, although you're ready to shell the cost for it, right? So that is your prepare and confirm them. Like, now execute, right? Now, before you essentially place an order, what are the things you do? You probably go to the CEO or to the head of the procurement department, and then essentially get a sign off for him on the budget, costing, and you basically then go to a legal department and then get the legal document certified, whether the agreement is watertight pack, that tomorrow if he backs off, you can essentially charge back to him. So these are the things which you basically are trying to do before you prepare and confirm, right? And then you basically execute the job. So now execution of the job is, once you place the order, what are the things you need? You need basically entering a bank account detail or raising a PO for it. So this is the execute. Now, once the order is placed, I think it's very clear. Monitor is essentially, how do you monitor what state the order is in? Is the order right now received by him? Has he accepted the PO? After he's accepted the PO, has he tried to kind of now place an order? Has he given you the time by what time it's going to get delivered? So these are the things which you basically, right, now monitor, and then you basically have modify. Assuming this something went wrong, can I go back and modify? I placed 10 boxes of syringes, but then actually I need 20 syringes because I'm seeing an order increase intake. Can I modify that order, right? How do you track the status of the orders and things like that, and plan for this one? And then finally you conclude. How do you know that you've done the job completed successfully? You receive the order, you confirm the PO has been received and the money has been released, right? So this, now you see how this framework helps you end to end. You take this for any job on earth, whether you're trying to place an order, whether you're trying to buy a car, which your carwale.com or trying to do, whether you are doing a banking job, like when you're trying to kind of manage your finances, everything, like for example cred, like you're trying to pay your bills, like the core job is their ability to pay my credit card bills on time. That is so, right, that is the core job. Right now you can look from end to end. If you go and open up cred, if you guys are using cred, you can see that all these jobs of locating, prepare, execute, monitor, modify, and conclude will become part of it, right? Now, in addition to that, as I said, right, you can essentially have a bunch of other jobs, which is essentially the emotional related jobs, or your emotional job could be that if I am able to kind of report back to the CEO that I have been able to place the orders on time and at a much better rate, and I'm able to show cost savings, then that's an emotional job for him, right? Because that elevates his name so which means that you probably have to build a reporting system for him, right? You'll understand that, right? Consumption paying job is if you're buying this on, like say if you have decided that the order payment will not happen at one stretch, it will happen quarter. Now every quarter you want to be reminded much ahead that you have to pay for that, right? So that becomes a consumption change job over there, right? Financial outcome, of course, is if you're able to build a report and say how much cost savings you did from year 1 to year 2, right? That will help him kind of do that will also kind of help him. So this is why JTBD framework helps you a lot in doing it. Yeah.
If we exactly apply this framework, right, we can get a lot of features into product as well, right?
Yeah.
So so exactly how each and every feature is done when the job is to be done.
Yeah.
And and that feature, I felt what I took away from here is that feature, how it has to be done is something that we ask by user interview. So what is that you are looking forward in this?
Yeah, you're not going to ask him for a solution. I'm hoping that is what you're trying to say. You're not asking for a solution, but all you're trying to ask him is what are the jobs you're trying to do and where are the pain points for you in those jobs, right? Now, if you solve those pain points, then you are building a right product or solution. Now, it might not all.
At each stage we are asking pain point.
Yeah.
At each stage we are asking pain point.
Yeah. But again, the other thing you guys have to remember, people will tell you hundreds of jobs. Now, I'm not touching on the bit where you, after you get the answers, how do you basically go about segment those answers and then figure out which is the one which has got the highest priority, which is the one which gives you the best outcome. That again is a separate topic of its own. But at least you will have a bunch of pain points which have come out. At the least, the quickest way to know whether that's the biggest pain point is if most of them are telling the same thing, then probably that is the biggest pain point, right? But there are analytical methods which you can use ultimately to essentially identify the highest job to be done, because each of these questions, when you will get like say 20, 30, 40, 50 jobs. Each of these locate, define will get, like now you'll have like probably thousands of jobs listed out when you complete this interview, if you properly do a synthesize. Now out of this 1,000, you will have to then pick up the ones which really matter to you, the top 50 or top 40 which you want to solve, and then rest of the other things you have to kind of sequence it. That again is that's more of analytics and customer segmentation and things like that, which you can run some kind of analytic tools with the help of your data science team, or if you are good at it, you can do that and come out with the answer. Yeah, question there, I see.
Hi, this is Swati. Half of my question was already answered. Like, how do you prioritize user interview findings when making product decision? And the other half is like, how do you ensure these findings are integrated into product roadmap?
Okay. That's a topic by itself. That's why I was trying to say that once I will touch a bit about it, which is the Gen AI part of it. I'll touch, right? And you build a very beautiful product, assuming you have been able to kind of empathize with the consumer, identify the right jobs and pain points which you want to solve for the consumer, and you have completed this process, and now you have built a product. How do you market the product? Right? How do you, if you're working in a very big organization, you will have to essentially give marketing team enough information on how they should go about market the product. You should give enough information to the sales team. Or if it's a product-led growth and you are responsible for it, like people those have been hearing to the Airbnb, this one, right? What BrainJSK essentially said was, I am essentially removing all product managers. I only need designers. What product managers actually need to do is essentially, once they identify a pain point, he wants them to essentially figure out means to market the solution. That's where he wants them to kind of spend their time on, right? Now this is where the world is moving towards, right? While if you're working in a GCC where probably the marketing and sales are all sitting somewhere else, but if you're working for a solution which is local, or you're building solutions for global also, but you are responsible for it, the product which you build ultimately will be successful only when people know about it, and then essentially are able to kind of find the solution which you have put out to the consumers, and then consume that, right? So which essentially tells you that you should also be worrying about how do you market the product. Now if you are asking, now here is where the funny bit comes about. A person who is going to order for groceries, wouldn't he, and you ask the set of questions for whom you built it, wouldn't he be the more better person to understand that how would he basically find about your product, right? He is the best person to give you an answer, rather than you going and asking a totally unrelated marketing team going and interviewing a totally unrelated person whom you have not asked, who probably does not have the same problems. He may give you a totally different reason, right? And then all the marketing material which is prepared is based upon the person whom you have not actually built a solution for, right? So you realize that this is one of the gaps which I've seen normally happens, that product managers normally go ask, interview, they build a solution, but then when they're trying to market, the voice which they are trying to use in the market is of a totally different person, right? Who is probably not even related to it. Now again I also want to say, like when you're working for a SaaS products, the consumer of the product could be, or the person who uses the product could be different. The person who signs the check might be different, and the person who finally approves it might be different. There might be different levers at which people might essentially be doing different jobs. Now in that case, these questions which I'm asking you, with the next set of questions which I'm showing to you, probably won't apply directly to a person who's going to use the product, but then to a person who's probably going to approve a product. Like for example, if you're sitting in if you're looking at a supply chain, right, like someone is using a supply chain product, the actual person who will be using the supply chain product will be the operations manager, right? But then the person who has to sign off on whether to buy the license of that product will probably be a CEO or the CTO of the company, or not the CTO, yeah, maybe the CTO or the CFO of the company, right? Now your messaging should be such that it basically satisfy all four of them, right? While the job which you're trying to do is for the operations guy, the person who has to essentially sign up for this product will be your CTO or a CFO or a CEO of the company. So your messaging should ultimately reach them, right? So if you, very very good examples which you can look at it is, like for example SAP, right? If you go if you go to the big airports and all, the SAP, the way they say is that 90% of the people around the world use our ERP products to do X and Y, Z, right? Why is that? They're not talking about a core job to be done, right? They are trying to market the product. Now who are the people whom they're trying to sell the product to? They are trying to sell the product to a CTO or a CEO, right? Now what happens is that when he sees the message, essentially says, oh, 90% of them are using, I am that 10% who's not using. Probably it may not be 90% for all you know, but the messaging is such that all the top 5 companies are using. The top 5 companies are believing in this product, then so now you see the messaging, how the messaging, now you basically see that where does he look for confirmation, where is he actually, what is the kind of messaging which when he looks at it, he gets bought into it. So these are the questions which you're trying, these are the inputs which you need to give to the marketing manager and the sales team or other people, creative team, to build a message for your product, right? So there is a very nice book about it, which is basically called The Buyer's Journey, like understanding how a purchase decisions are made. A purchase decision is as much emotional as much as economical decision, right? So you essentially trying to now figure out what is that, like So there are 5 things, which basically 5 kind of questions which you need to ask the consumers while concluding the interview, if essentially he is the person who's going to ultimately buy the product, so that you can market it to the mass, right? Which is basically what factors influence the final decision to purchase the product, right? Like for example, this is essentially, there are 5 things, which is that one is called the priority initiative. Like the question could be like, what prompted the need for you to evaluate for a new procurement solutions for hospital, starting on the example which I had previously taken, right? If the priority initiative question will be like, why do you want to go to a new solution for your hospital? I mean, previously you were doing it in a ledger, right? Why is that you want to go, right? He will now tell you the emotional reason behind it. He'll say essentially, my life is a nightmare. I am spending 14-15 hours in my. So basically your answer could be that when you craft your message, it could be that get the job done in an hour, right? Peace of mind. These are the kind of words which might come out when you ask these kind of questions. Success factors, right? What specific outcomes are you looking at it? Like how do you know that when you're trying to buy this particular product or a solution, how will you know what message will appeal to you, saying that what is that one key message will appeal to you, which will tilt the balance to you to buy the product? He says that get the job done in 1 hour, right? Like now that 1 hour is what you are getting from the person whom you are taking an interview. Those words go into your marketing message, right? Perceived barriers. Now perceived barriers is essentially you're trying to ask people like, what could be the reasons for which you may not switch to my new platform, right? He may essentially say that it could be that there are multiple products. I don't really know how to compare for the same product. So then you essentially know that, okay, the perceived barriers could be that he probably needs a proper comparison chart against the top performing products in the market, right? Or it could be that he might essentially say, you know what, the perceived barrier could be that I first probably want to use the product first, and really before I make such a big commitment, I want to essentially feel the product, which essentially means that you probably need to have some free modules for it, right? Or you basically have to give them a 1 month free this one. So these are the kind of things which you get when you try and ask this question, right? Bias journey, like then you ask him, like, before you take this decision, how do you go about, what are the steps you follow ultimately to buy this product, right? You say that I basically want to first try this product out, then I have to go and talk to my finance team, I have to go and talk to this person. So now you know who are all there in the decision making process. Like a very nice example one of my professors said was, in the villages, the mobile phone is ultimately bought by the husband, right? Although the users are female or the housewives, because I mean, of course, roles are changing, but if you kind of look at it, still the main person who holds the cash in the family is the head of the family, will normally be a male, right? Now the person who is buying is a male, but the person who is using is a female, right? Now while all your jobs to be done could be asked to the lady member of the household, right? Whereas your buying questions will essentially be now going towards the husband, like what makes you make buy? He essentially say, I need it really nicely designed so that when I present it to my wife, it looks really nice, right? So which means that he's other than the core job to be done, he's looking at the aesthetics of it, right? And then so that's how you get those interviews, right? And then decision criteria is essentially what needs to go into. As I said, decision criteria is what features must have. These are the features which he says is must have for me. Out of the 10 jobs to be done, now you have come up with a bunch of features, right? Now if these 3 things are done, I am bought in. So that should form. So now you may probably be doing 50 jobs, but whereas the top 3 jobs which you want to highlight in your marketing message is these 3. This is what you get when you ask them. So remember, the roles of product management are changing. You are no more just building the product, you are also now responsible for marketing the product, and hence it becomes even more important for you that how do you know you can sell the product which you have built, and that is the showcase behind this set of questions. This kind of summarizes what I was trying to tell. Yeah, go ahead.
So I was thinking about one example where so the boost has to sell it to mom, but actually it is consumed by kid.
Yeah, correct.
Right.
Correct.
So
now
kid
correct.
cannot buy it, right? Basically, he doesn't have power to buy. But if he has to consume it, then we have to hit the right spot.
Correct. right? So for a kid, what could be the job is he wants to be able to gulp it very quickly so that he can get quick energy. So your product characteristics are essentially making it soluble in the milk very quickly, be able to consume it very fast. Whereas for a father, the thing is your son will grow by an inch more or 2 inch more, or he's going to get stronger bones. The kid probably will not know about all these things. So you see, the buying decision is made by a different marketing message, whereas a core product is solving a totally different problem for a right. There are two different people in this entire consumption, in this entire job to be done.
Yeah, true.
I again have a question. What type of user interview model do you generally use? From Swati, right? So this is the model which I showed you is the one which currently I showed you, Swati. Basically the JTBD model plus the buyer journey model, right? Which is essentially the asking the priority initiative questions, success factor questions, pursuit barriers, buyer journey, and decision questions. So I essentially have I put all these categories which I showed in the previous slide and this slide, and then jot down the set of questions for it. Put that into an Excel sheet or to this one, and then distribute it to the team who are going to conduct the interview. Sometimes I basically conduct the interview, and there will be an observer there, right, along with you, or it will be you will be conducting the interview then. So, but there is a structure. This is how I structure my questions. I first complete the jobs to be done questions, the emotional jobs and everything, and then I go and ask these kind of buyer persona questions, right? Now, when you ask the questions, you might not probably give you the answer in the first time, in which case you will follow the 5 whys methodology. Why, right? You basically, when you ask a question, what prompted the need for you to evaluate a new procurement solutions for your hospital, he may not give you the answer right away. Hey, it is because it is a tedious job. Why? A tedious job, he will essentially say that, you know what, every day it takes me, why is it a tedious job? It is taking me 6 hours. Okay, so what if it takes you 6 hours? Well, you know what, because it takes 6 hours, I've got morning, I've got 4 hours of meeting, evening, I've got like say, I have to spend 5 hours. So by the time I go home, it is 7, by the time I close my job, it is 7 or 8 p.m. at the night, right? Now, so it kind of builds pressure on me, right? So you ask those why questions till you get to the core, right? Ultimately, you realize that then you oh, okay. Ultimately, the reason why he wants to do is that he wants to save time, right? That comes out as an outcome from there. Any other questions? I hope.
Anjum has raised hand.
Yeah. Hi, Bopanna. You said you select a set of customers and for the interview. Then you take their feedback and go and iterate. So when you incorporate and come out with a solution, do you go back to the same set of users to re-evaluate, or you just leave it to there? Does customer satisfaction come into picture during that phase?
Yeah. So see, re-evaluation, you can do a blind one, which is basically you can call someone who probably has no idea about it, and you can also call the same people. There's no harm in calling the same people for whom you have interviewed and present your solution to them to kind of verify. Ultimately, again, the test is in the market. So when you launch the product, when you throw it out to the maximum amount of consumers, if you have written your metrics very clearly, right, what is the job, what is that you will measure the success on, then you should be automatically be able to see whether that is working for you or not. Now, if it does not work, then you can probably go back and ask questions to the same set of people, or you can recruit a bunch of new people whom you can ask. There's no hard and fast rule, but yeah, your initial solution, normally people will go back and validate against the same people, because they are the people, as I said, they are the profiles whom you have selected to ask those interviews. So when you present them a solution, because you're building a solution based upon what they told, it is better to verify from them because they are more relevant to it. Whereas you can also do a bit of blind this one. People whom you have not interviewed, you can also still go and show to them. But they should match the profile ultimately, because you're trying to solve for a profile, right?
Yeah. So before you get it into the market, you just go for a step of reevaluation.
Yeah. So that's the slide, the first slide which I essentially showed over there, where you do cart sorting methodology and you do a user testing methodology, right? The first slide, right? Focus groups, participatory design, cart sorting, usability testing, eye tracking. All of this are essentially done to validate before you do a big launch, right? Once you do a big launch, it is the bottom bit of it where you essentially do a automated usability testing, like how are consumers using. You basically that nothing. Automated usability testing is nothing but anything is nothing but your tracking. You're tracking the in Google Analytics how the consumer is doing, where is it dropping off, which page is it dropping off, so that you have that information. Now, why is it dropping off? You can go back and ask the interview questions to the people who have been using your product, whom you know are using. Why did you drop off at that point, right? Site traffic, A/B testing is essentially figuring out which design works fine. Finally, the other thing is user service. You can run user surveys. There is very nice tools where after customer completes a job, you have seen in Amazon and other things, like when you do a return, right? He asks you, why did you do this return? I'm trying to understand more of it. That when you completed a return, you're asking that question, what could be done better for him? Right? And then ultimately people will leave that feedback anywhere and everywhere, collect that feedback. That also again comes back and feeds back to your backlog if we are successful or not successful.
Thank you.
I just read an incident of the like asking the wrong user interview question. Like in 2009, Walmart decided to make a redesign in order to declutter their shops. So when they do the user interview, so most of the customers said yes, we like the redesign, but their overall sales decreases. So my question is that how do we ensure our user interview questions are truly uncovering the root causes of user problems, rather than just surface level preferences?
Okay. I'm trying to rephrase your question. Like, let me put this right. Like when I was working for one of the e-commerce companies, right? What we did was we essentially said, why don't we know that the purchasing behavior is so and so. So why don't we have a favorites page, which will be the first landing page for them, right? And when they can basically add the products from that favorites page, and then that way we are making their job of purchasing the entire orders very good, very fast and quick, and then they'll do a checkout of it. Now everyone said yes, but the funny part was that in grocery world or in the grocery world, the real margins come in only in the long tail project. That is when you're browsing, you find something which you probably don't want to buy. Like so, you although you're introducing a pain in the system, the pain was essentially helping you get more basket size orders, right? Hence, the favorites has this one showing and landing it up as the first page for the customers or explicitly marketing it was not considered as a good option, right? Now, this you can learn. I mean, if you, this is where I was telling about, right? Desirability is one thing, right? Like, I mean, whether the customer desires a feature, yes, he'll say yes. Favorites is the most important thing. It will help me make my journey. But then you also look at viability and feasibility, whether it's a viable solution for you. You may probably lose your customer, the basket size, right? The order size might get reduced because of it. Then you probably don't build it, right? You don't make it as easy as it is, right? Ultimately, you may then come up with a in-between solution, which essentially says that, hey, this is in favorites. I also will try and market certain products. Not that I'll just simply list it. I'll probably put the first 2 products, and the next 4 products are probably the products which I want to market, right? Then the next 2 products come there. So that way is at least browsing through this one, right? Through the list, and it's not just ads, and it goes off, right? So this is this again is through, some of it is through learning. There's no choice. You will learn when you. I mean, the famous thing is what Muhammad Ali says, no, that how much ever you may train in the ring, the real thing is when you come to the ring and when the punch lands on your face, whether you'll be able to get up is what will ultimately determine whether you can win the match or not. So some things, how much ever you may prepare outside the ring, can only be learned when you're inside the ring. And the key thing which differentiates a good person to a bad person is someone who does not stick to that stick to his original thoughts and shall not change. Something is wrong. No, I am right. The consumer is wrong, right? If you do that, then you will run into issues. But once you get that hit and then you realize what you committed a mistake and you make changes, that okay, fine, I am supposed to avoid this jab. I should duck. I should learn to duck from him. I should not play right in front of him. I should make him run around and make him tired before I start hitting him. That if you make the changes in the game, right? You can take cricket as an analogy or anything, right? And make those changes, then you will be able to survive. You are going to hit when you come to the ring. It's not that every time you're successful. At some point in your journey, you will get hit. What makes a difference is whether you're able to take that and make changes, take that feedback positively and make those changes. I don't have a silver bullet for it. I don't know.
but well explained. I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's a good question, by the way. I mean, when you ask these kind of questions, my memory jogs and I can actually think of my experience, what I have gone through. 18 years of experience, otherwise I cannot.
Yeah, you reminded me like I go to supermarket, I buy everything other than what I went to buy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the bit which why they make you go through certain sections. Like they know you want to buy your X and your this one, so they don't actually put that right in the front. They make you go to take you through a journey. Normally in the front of it are high margin products, then the low margin products come at a bit behind. They make you search a bit. Then at the checkout you see all of a sudden you'll see certain items which like are high margin but fast moving goods, which you may okay fine, your kid is standing there, next to it he'll ask for a chocolate, okay, put the chocolate over there, right? Or you have a product which is expiring very quickly, you want to catch his attention, you put it over there, say that it's on sale. Everything is around it. I mean, the more you learn about the consumer, the more you essentially build and make things easy for him to get his job done better. And of course, as long as you're making money in an ethical manner, in a good manner, I don't think you should feel guilty about it. Okay, one thing I remember, guys, user interview is something which you cannot sit at a place and learn about it. There's a lot you learn on the job. So key thing is, whenever there's an opportunity for you to be part of any user interview process, please go and join. Put yourself up there. Put yourself into that uncomfortable position. It is by habit only you will learn. Without doing it, you will not learn, right? I'm trying to show how you can essentially use the interview snippets to generate, synthesize and do an analysis, thematic analysis, right? So you can search about it in the Google. There's a lot of articles available in Medium about it, right? So it's essentially thematic analysis tells you a methodology where you can essentially analyze the qualitative data and convert those transcripts, and then how do you go about and extract meaningful information out of it, right? So so what you're seeing is that as part of thematic analysis, you identify those key thematic scripts which you feel are good enough. And then what you do is that using those scripts, you basically do a bit of coding, right? So if you look at this bottom thing here, right? So what is it? Personally, I'm not sure. I think climate is changing. So this is a person who's a skeptic about a climate change, right? Now, if you get this script, now you can sit with a couple of people, brainstorm, and then you will then do a bit of coding around it. And the coding will essentially say uncertainty, acknowledgement of climate change, distrust of experts, changing terminology. These are you basically code those wordings which have come. Now, when you interview a bunch of people who are climate skeptics, they all will have almost come with the same kind of coding if you analyze their wordings. But then that is a very tedious process for you, right? Like if you are interviewed 100 people, going through the 1 hour interview and trying to pick out it. But you can pick up certain snippets, or you can take up the entire interview and then feed it to a Gen AI model and ask them to give you a coding. If you ask it to do coding, it will do that coding for you. That is the good thing about how you can do it. Like then, yeah, from there you can kind of say what are the themes, right? You can come up with, right? Like you can look here, uncertainty, leave it to experts, alternative. Theme is uncertainty, distrust of experts, misinformation. So now from here you can then identify the solutions that you want. What might we do to remove the uncertainty? What might we do to remove people to believe the experts? What might we do to remove the information? So now you understand. So this is how you know what are the problems you want to solve. So you interviewed a bunch of climate skeptics. You got a bunch of quotes, right, which is coming out over there. So you got a bunch of quotes, some people commonly saying uncertainty, leave it to experts, alternative explanations, changing terminology, distrust, scientists is a bunch of people are saying things which are coming out common by a bunch of people. And then there are incorrect facts, misunderstanding of science, biased media sources, is bunch of people, right? Now this entire quotes, you can then convert them into themes. And from these themes, you can then, there's a very simple thing, it's called what might we do, right? How might we solve this problem? You can form a question. Now here is what I have done, right? Same thing. I essentially identified customer profiles who are teenagers who read a lot of books. Then there are casual readers who read a lot of books, and then there are a bunch of adult avid readers. Now I've given a definition of these customer profiles to the ChatGPT. I'm using ChatGPT here, right? Just scroll down. Yeah, so there are like profiles: teenage avid customers, adult avid customers. This one Sheikh will either way share with you guys. So you can use this for when you're trying to do this, right? And figure out how the structure. Then what I essentially tell ChatGPT is, this is my profile of customers whom I'm interviewing, right? And you can also tell him what are the questions you asked him, but I've avoided that here, right? And then you can pick up the snippets. These are the snippets. This is essentially the exact words which they use when they were trying to do this. Now there are a lot of tools which are available to convert speech to text. You can just pass all the interview content in from speech into text, and then you can pass that text directly into ChatGPT, right? So I have picked up a couple of snippets here. So I have a lot of books collection in my cupboard ready to read, and then this is the snippets of another profile of customers who have told me, right? Adult avid reader, snippet 1, snippet. I picked up the common snippets over there, okay, right? And then you basically casual reader. So I've taken all the important snippets of it, and then what I now normally what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to take this, sit with a bunch of people, and then do this coding analysis, right? But if you kind of please do a thematic analysis of the interview snippets as part of the output, list this as coding and themes derived from analysis of the interview snippets. If you feed this entire thing to ChatGPT, it will ultimately, this is the output which you will get. So you can see here, ultimately it has only coded for me. It has essentially said at large personal books collections, willingness to lend books, monetizing and lending, charging. Theme is access, sharing, and access and sharing of reading materials. Like how can people access and share their reading materials which they want to do. Difficulty in finding like-minded people. Community building, and how my theme is community building. Right. Then your question is, how might I do a community building exercise in reading? Right. That is the theme which you can generate out of it. Right. So you can actually feed this entire, if you feed a profile of the consumers whom you're interviewing, probably also the questions which you have asked the consumers which you have created, and snippets. Ultimately, if you feed this to a Gen AI engine, it will give you all the themes and your codes. And if you ask him also give me how might be statement, it will also tell you what are the problems which you need to solve. And then it is easy for you. From there on, you can basically rank that problem, right? Which is the most problem which is most beneficial to you, which is the most, and then you basically prioritize your features, right? Or you can do a cluster analysis. If you want to do totally unguided way of doing things, is essentially do a cluster analysis, and through cluster analysis you can get clusters of problems which need to be solved, and then you can figure out the solutions for it. That is what I wanted to kind of talk about, the whole user interview process, which is one line item in that entire scheme of what a product manager does. I mean, if someone says what a product manager does, the one line item called user interviews has got so many things to it, and this is not the end, right? Now from here you will have to go and then synthesize this data, convert them into how might we problem statements, quantify the problem statement which you want to solve. Then from there you have to work with the design team to come up with wireframes, and from the wireframes then you have to figure out what is the happy part, negative parts which you want to do. You have to go back again to the consumer and then verify whether what you built is right or wrong, whether it makes sense to them. Then you have to get into the sprint execution process where you essentially talk with the developers and build a solution for it. And once that is done, parallel you have to start working with your marketing and your sales team to message it properly. And then you'll have to also talk to your analytics team on what should be measured, what should not be measured. In between, on top of it, if you're in a much higher role, you are then essentially contributing to you're mapping your feature which you built to the business goals and objectives, and trying to convince your higher ups why we have to build, why we should spend money on it, right? So you can just imagine the amount of work which a product manager does there at the end of the day. So like if you have a full end-to-end product management job, you are doing all of this. Of course, you will have multiple levels, so people will probably be not the person who is probably be involved in the nuts and bolts of it may not be probably involved in talking to the higher management. That's a different story, but you can see what product management as a role entails at the end of the day.
If actually any person feels a real product manager, 24 hours is not enough, I believe.
Yeah, one person cannot do everything.
That was going to be my last question, Bopanna. A day in your life. I think you just answered it.
Yeah, a day in a life is based on your product role. Like when you're beginning, you're like I'll tell you, but see, one thing I want to tell you guys is when you're starting out as a product manager, this thing you always remember. I'll give you a very simple example, and it's a very nice example. An APM was asked to essentially say, the help and support section which we show about a product, right? So assuming you're a APM of Dyson, right? Now in the Dyson, this one, what happens is that you have a help and menu section. Now normally people ignore the help and menu section. They say, hey, what, it's a bunch of questions, you give a bunch of answers to it, you ask the questions and then you reply and answer. Probably people will not worry about it and they'll just forget about it. But if given to right APM person, the way he will look at it is, okay, now there are a bunch of questions there and answers. I want people to read my questions and answers, and ultimately there should be an outcome of it. Now what will he do? He will essentially see, what can I surface these questions and answer to him, like did a card to him which basically says, did you know about this at the right time at the right place? Let's take, and if I take for an example, if there is a methodology to clean if you have to increase the life of the Dyson, right, and you know that it's a two-way street, assuming that it's a two-way street, that of course you will give them the best product, but then he also has to do a bit of maintenance work around it, right? Now if you essentially, there is a section which basically FAQ section which tells how to clean the product, you should know that after 4 or 5 users of this, which is normally a week or two, you should surface this card to the consumer on the app. Now once that is shown to him, he will realize, oh okay, now now I have to clean, and this is how this does stuff. That is when it is more relevant to him. But had you shown that to him in the day one, he would not be, you just go through it and you would forget about it. So this is how, if you look at it individually at your role. Now what happens is that once that is done, then you go back and measure how many people after 1 week have returned it saying that they had a problem. If you are able to reduce the number of callbacks, because you would have given a warranty period of say 30 days, no questions asked, and you realize that the most important reason why people are bringing it is because when they're trying to empty this or do some cleaning, they're actually spoiling it. Now if that quality, the Q norm or the Dyson machine is not coming back to your showroom, if that has reduced by X percentage, which means that your and the time at which you're surfacing this question and if it's read to this is actually helping. This is how, at the thinnest level, which is for someone to build an FAQ page, APM, a normal APM who's not actual product manager, oh yeah, ask me to build a FAQ page, I'll go ask to the operations team what should be there as part of it. I'll just list that all as a questions. I'll put that as a link FAQ. If I have done my job, it is over here. A good product manager will do the other way around. He'll say, okay, these are the questions, which are the most important one in there. When should I surface them? If I surface them, what is the benefit? This is how a good product manager. So in your role, you will have to think what to do.
Again, back to that question which Anjum has asked. How does your day look like?
How does my day as a product manager? I spend around 50% of my time actually trying to convince my higher ups as to what is the direction which we should take, right? Because there are business objectives. So we have like a platform, and we will have like we're building common set of services for a huge bunch of products. Now what should that look like, right? How do we structure that, right? So that is what I will be spending most of my time at my role, and then guiding my junior product managers as to, this is the objectives which we want to hit, and these are the features which we feel that will make sense. Now go ahead and detail out that features and try and get that. So that is the kind of work which I am currently doing, where I have a set of business objectives which come from the top down, and I basically say what is the product roadmap I can essentially draw in to help the meet those business objectives. How am I going to measure that business objective? What are the risks in it? How have I mitigated those risks? These are the things which I get involved when I'm trying to do this, and then talk to my juniors about percolate this information in a manner which they can understand, so that they can go ahead and build the nuts and bolts of it, and monitor them whether they're building it at the right time and other things. And again, come back to forward thinking, right? Like what next, do more market research and analysis and things like that. That's the kind of work we do. Yeah. And hence my precursor question was that the precursor answer was for an APM. So as an APM, don't think you're not. You're also an important person in that entire scheme of things, whether an APM or a PM. Each at your own level, ultimately monitor it and see how. It'll become like a bit of a. I'll take just 2 minutes. The idea why I gave that APM example is the brain chase keys question. Brain chase essentially said that as a product manager, if you build a feature and you're not able to market it and then not able to derive benefit out of it, you are useless, right? Why do I need to even build a feature? So now here is an APM who has actually built a feature and then he has also marketed it by showing it to the consumer at the right time, and then he has actually delivered an outcome in case of the the Dyson, this one, where the returns of that week has reduced. Right? You see how small piece of work can actually do. And this is what Brain Chase keeps telling, that don't just build features, learn also how to market and surface it to people. Okay, Kishore, I think Kishore probably has not given a choice. I'll give him one choice and then we'll come back to Swati. Yeah, Kishore.
Yeah, sure.
So one is the user interview. Whatever the steps you mentioned is one thing, and how you capture them and try to automate it to generate a content so that you can be able to share with the stakeholders. For example, like the moment you capture it, again you may have to do the visual presentations to convince your stakeholders. As you said,
Correct.
you are spending most of your time to convince your stakeholders, right? And also at the same time, you may have to spread this information to all your other stakeholders. Like one is capturing it.
Correct.
And putting into it could be like if you're using a Jira, you may have to try to epics or user stories.
Correct.
So that the information is passed on consistently across all the stakeholders.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there anything, any tools which you use for automating all of this, or it's a manual way you recommend?
There is. So in Jira and other places I've seen you can automate it a bit. Mine is mainly manual, as I said, but nowadays we are using ChatGPT, as I said, to some extent to kind of speeden the process up. But otherwise, there is no shortcut to this. It is a tedious job. But what you can do is that you can build the database and you can file it in a manner where you can refer back to it at any point of time. And to file it is what I was showing to you, the thematic analysis process, right? In thematic analysis, what you do is that you pick up the most important snippets, then you essentially have a coding, then you identify the themes from that coding, and then you essentially have the what the problem statement actually called out. Now you have this properly documented somewhere, right? Then you are essentially trying to you can go back and convince. Then you do a quantitative analysis of it, right? Like once you got the themes, you then use those problem statements. You do a bit of quantitative analysis on the top of it, kind of a segmentation of those problems, and then you basically identify which can give you the highest amount of return. So there is a concept which comes as your net present value or your IRR calculations, where you essentially do that. If I spend so much money on building this and this is the internal rate of return, by what time I can realize that money. Not everyone does it, but then it's one of the ways of doing it. So it's capturing that information and then filing it in a proper manner where you can go back and refer and explain it to someone, and then keep updating it. Like when, as I said, when you get more and more information, you go on, keep on updating it. It's a very boring job, but you have to do it if you have to survive. There is no other choice. As you said, ultimately when you take it to the higher management, with what confidence are you saying that this is the feature which is working on? This is the pre-work. This is the work which we have done. Like here is 20, 40, 50 interviews which I have done. This is the output of it, and this is how I am able to quantify it. This is how I'm able to do it. You have to do that entire thing, and that is where the PRD comes into picture. A good PRD, a product PRD document, which normally people write, is they only will have a bunch of features written and then I want to measure against this. But a good PRD will have all these things documented. Whatever I saw, what is the secondary desktop research which you did, how many customer interviews did you did, what did they say, a brief note on what the solution will look like and why does it actually say it makes sense, and then the financial bit of it. Finally, at the bottom of it, you will write what are the features you want to build to kind of have it. So when you write a PRD document, product requirements document, if you capture the things which I said, then automatically you are confident and you will be able to present that to your stakeholders, whether it is your higher ups or to your marketing manager or to your sales person about it.
Thank you, Bopanna.
The point is, each one of this will be a topic of its own, guys. So I'm giving you just the headlines. So I mean, I can pick up just that and say, make like a 2-hour session just on that, how to do it.
Yeah, hi. My question is, I think it's you're the right person to ask because you have experience working in some e-commerce platform. You built one feature and you checked with a beta version and everything works good, and now you released a complete feature. then the experience was low. For example, like CTA is not that fruitful. Then you took the interviews and you get the like a bad feedback, or which is not very not good feedback. Then in such case, what kind of action you will take?
Such kind of cases, I mean, first is that you acknowledge that it's a problem, right? So you're not seeing you have a what you say key outcomes defined for your this one. It's like you were expecting that the click-through rate is at least 20% of people click through it, right? Then you first you acknowledge that that's a problem. Then you essentially look for solutions for it. I mean, but before you go and solve that problem, you have to figure out whether that's the topmost problem to solve or not, right? And then you'll have to go back and check. Maybe the positioning of the button is not right. Maybe the color of the button is not right. Maybe the description of the button is not right. So you go back and you do that, ask the consumers. So the first thing you can actually do is, if a person you are expecting a person to do an action and he did not complete the action, you probably ask him, why did you not complete this action? Like, you can show you can keep an analytics tag over there, right? And then when the customer moves out of that screen or does an action which is not what you expected him to do, you can ask him, why did you not do this action? What was the problem, right? That is, you can surface it to some people. That way you will get direct feedback from them, right? The other thing is, you can do a heat map analysis as to see, or if you do actually this one, what you say, the funnel analysis, you can see at which point in the journey has it dropped off, right? Why did he drop? Then you can figure out why did he drop off, right? Maybe, okay, he's coming here and here, probably then he's dropping off because the explanation is not clear, or is it is more complex that he's not able to understand what is the next step he has to do. You do a deeper analysis. What I tell you, Swati, is do not fret about the solution. If you see there is a problem, try to root cause the problem. Once you root cause the problem, there are enough people around you who will help you with the solution. So acknowledge the problem, highlight it, there is an issue over here. I expected this to happen, this does not happen. If you have done that, that itself is a great thing. Most people don't even measure what they build. If you have done that, you are already 50% through it. The other 50% would be to essentially deep dive into it, use one of the 5 I methodologies to figure out and do a root cause analysis and figure out why that problem has happened, right? And for that you have tools. As I said, you can do their journey analysis, customer journey analysis, and see at what time they have dropped down. If you do an action which is not related to it, or even if they do an action which is related to it, some of them who did an action which is related to it, you can ask them, why did you do this action? Why did you not do this action? You'll get positive, you'll get immediate feedback, or that people would like to answer will tell you why I did that, and then you can work it out.
Thank you.
Short answer, there is no silver bullet. But key thing is, are you measuring what you're doing? Which I'm hearing, what you're asking, the question you're asking, I'm understanding that you're trying to measure what you're doing, which is a good thing. Then once you know that it is not meet your level, then you essentially go back and do a journey analysis and all the things which I said to kind of. So now again, this is a very good thing what you brought. So when you are building your features, there are things which you need to remember, which is tagging. Tagging is very important if you're building an IT product. Basically, or if you're building a physical product, you should have points at which you can get feedback from the consumer as to what he's trying to do, and then you can use that feedback to kind of improve your services or this one, right? So feedback is the only way you can do it.
And thank you, Bopanna. In spite of your busy schedule, and I know product managers don't complete their work. Like, it needs more than 24 hours, I believe. So in spite of that, you are here explaining us like what is happening in the world of user interviews and all that. And I appreciate that you keep doing these user interviews as a hobby as well. So to sharpen your mind, that is a fantastic thing. So that's a key takeaway for me, that when you are not in like war, right? So you should not keep quiet. You should practice. So then you don't sweat in the war, or you don't get defeated. So I believe this is a key takeaway from me. And anybody else wants to speak? Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
No problem. Thanks.
Really insightful session, Bopanna. Thank you.
Thank
no
you.
problem.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
a lot, guys.
Thank you so
Glad
much.
that I'm helpful to you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.